On lonely highways at night, certain stories are whispered again and again. Some say they are illusions. Others call them the whispers of wandering souls. When the roar of the engine drowns your heartbeat, can you trust what your eyes see? Tonight, we step into one of the most haunting urban legends, the tale of a hitchhiking girl and her unexplainable vanishing. That night, I left work later than usual. The rain had just passed, and the road gleamed like a polished black ribbon, catching the scatter of streetlights. I left the window cracked an inch, letting in a damp breath of earth. The radio fizzed with an old song that sounded as if it came from a distance too far to name. I wasn't in a hurry to go home. The highway at the city's edge is usually empty, curving through quiet fields and low hills, with a farmhouse light or two hanging like isolated stars. The speedometer sat at 60. After the wipers stopped, rings of dried water lingered on the glass. It's only at times like these I notice how badly I need silence. The inner noise eases back at night, like a tide. But this night was not the same. I kept sensing something pacing my car, just outside the edge of my vision. Just past the old gas station curve, I saw a figure at the shoulder, a slim, white shape standing in the wind, hair plastered to one side of her face. She raised her hand, not with a sharp jab, but with a quiet request. "Slow down. Wait for me." I eased off the pedal and flicked on the hazards. A young woman stood there in clothing too thin for the season, fabric like late spring caught in early autumn wind. Her gaze wasn't piercing. It was steady, quiet, with a bit of fog pooled in the eyes. I unlocked the door. She slipped into the passenger seat with movements soft enough to be soundless. Laying a soaked scarf over her knees, she spoke for the first time. "Could you take me home?" Her voice was gentle, polite. I asked where she lived. She gave a name I didn't recognize and added, "You'll see it if you keep straight. The turn comes right after the light's end." She didn't speak much. Her answers were clipped. "Where are you coming from?" "From here." "Who are you going to see?" "I'm going home." Each sentence was missing a half, as if she didn't want to carry certain details into the car. I tried small talk. "This road is dangerous at night, the shoulders narrow." She nodded. "I know." A pause. "I used to walk it often." The tone sounded like memory, but more like a habit that never changed. I glanced over. Her fingertips were pale, as if lifted from cold water. She hadn't buckled her seatbelt. When I reached to help, she leaned back a fraction and whispered, "No need." The cold seeped in inch by inch. The AC wasn't high, yet her breath fogged the glass into soft milk. She held the scarf tighter, but she didn't shiver. A wet, moldy smell drifted through the cabin, like walls in a basement long fed by rain. The radio looped a single bar, a needle stubbornly stuck. "More heat?" I asked. She shook her head, eyes fixed on the dark ahead, as if tracking a visible boundary. "There'll be a slope," she said. "After that, you turn." "Which way?" "Home," she said, as if this had already been explained. The slope was as she said, gentle and long. I slowed as each streetlight slid over the roof like pages of an old album. Ahead, a line of white glare rose, temporary lights from a construction site. And then, just as she promised, the lights ended and the dark thickened a shade. "There," she lifted a hand toward the right. "There's an old iron gate with roses." I watched her hand. Her knuckles were almost translucent. "You mean roses in the metalwork?" She nodded, and for a moment her eyes softened. "I used to like that one. Long ago." "Long ago," I echoed. She didn't answer. Her gaze fell to the scarf on her lap. The weave looked like a drowned flower. I adjusted the rear view, trying to catch her face. Mirrors lie at night. The light quivers, and so do the shapes inside it. Maybe it was the angle, but her outline was thin, like a shadow. On the right, she said suddenly. There's a little shelter, rain cover. I used to wait there for someone to pick me up. Who? She smiled, a small expression that seemed apologetic, or simply unwilling to explain. Whoever I was meant to wait for. I couldn't say why a street name lifted in my mind. Not hers, but the place she'd mentioned earlier. I remembered it in the corner of a newspaper. A late-night crash. Up ahead, she said again. Be ready to turn. The turn was a sharper bend, the guardrail dark with rain. I slowed to 30, low beams slicing the thick, revealing the gate's shadow, the metal roses frozen mid-bloom. I started to tell her we'd arrived. Look, the gate. Her side of the car went light, not a violent emptiness, but as if a weight had been gently lifted. Her scarf remained. No, it had slipped into the crease between seat and door, the edge pressed wetly to the fabric. I reached for it and found my fingers full of cold, as if I had dipped them into the night. Hello? I called softly, as if not to wake someone. The passenger seat was empty. The seatbelt hung loose, the buckle tapping the frame with a small, brittle sound. I stopped in front of the gate and put the hazards on. The rain was gone, but the wind kept dragging leaves across the hood. Behind the gate, a narrow path ran between rows of cypress, black as still water. I got out, opened the passenger door. The air dropped a couple of degrees. No wet mark on the seat, no footprint, no impression of where she'd been. Only the scarf, with a single, nearly invisible strand of hair clinging to its edge. There was a low sound on both sides of the door, not like people, not like wind, more like a distant choir inhaling. I lifted the scarf. The cold climbed my fingers as if swallowing them. I don't know why I whispered, I brought you home. The words left my mouth and I realized, this wasn't a house. It was the cemetery gate. I folded the scarf and set it back on the passenger seat. I didn't go in. I turned toward the nearest town, driving with only my breath for company and the cold lodged in my fingertips. A small store was still lit. An old man was closing accounts. I asked about the road and the gate with roses. He looked up, hesitating, as if deciding whether to speak. Is this your first time seeing her? He asked. I didn't argue. I said nothing. He sighed. Years ago, a girl walked that road, even in winter. One rainy night, she met the bend the wrong way. Since then, people say she asks for rides home. But her home is through that rose gate. He glanced at my hands. Are your fingers still cold? Some folks hold what she leaves behind, and they can't warm back up for days. I looked at my fingertips, like the night had stained them. If you pass again, he said, leave what's hers on the stone ledge just inside the gate. She remembers. On the way back, the night had thickened. The road felt endless, swallowing and spitting the headlights. I stopped before the bend, hazards blinking, carried the scarf, and pushed the gate. The hinge let out a dry sigh. Just inside stood a low stone ledge, thinly veiled with moss. I set the scarf there. As my fingertips left the fabric, the cold loosened, an inch of warmth returning, as if a hand lifted from mine. Outside again, I shut the gate. At the car, my reflection on the window was pale, as if through a layer of fog. As I reached for the handle, another pair of eyes surfaced beside mine, steady, watching, as if looking close from very far away. I spun around. Only wind. No steps, no voice. I drew a breath, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The seatbelt clicked, sharp, precise, like an answer. I didn't look back. The car rolled forward, the road unspooling under me. The old song finally slipped past the stuck bar and kept singing. Soft, old, far away. Like someone, at last, finishing the way home.